Alright, hey everybody, this is going to be a video on my PvP Mirage build. Um, it's a lot of fun. It's not the best build. I don't really consider it meta, but it's still fun. It can hold its own, and I enjoy the playstyle because it involves kind of predicting what I think my opponents are going to do. And that's fun. So if you enjoy that kind of disruptive, mobile playstyle where you feel kind of like an assassin, I guess, and you go around and you quickly try to burst people and help your team, then this build might be for you. So enjoy, and thanks again. So let's get right to it. Okay, so we have dueling, domination, and mirage. So in dueling, we take duelist discipline, fencer's finesse, and deceptive evasion. In domination, we take bountiful blades, furious interruption, and power block. In mirage, we're going to take self-deception. That's my dog chasing my cat. Sorry about that. We take self-deception, desert distortion, and infinite horizon. So let's go over these traits. Let's go over the default ones at first. So critical infusion. This is just icing on the cake. You want vigor. This gives you vigor when you do a critical hit. When we go over the gear, you will see we're a power-based burst class, so we're always going to be doing critical hits. So free vigor, more dodges, yay. Sharper images. This is like borderline useless, but I mean, it has some uses that are rather niche and people don't really think about. So this build is it's kind of like a support, but it's DPS support. It's burst support. The idea behind the build is you get in there, you do your burst, you try to be disruptive with your interrupts and your CC, and then you also try to be deceptive by tricking the enemy players into losing sight of you, losing focus of you. So they're put in a position where you're doing a lot of damage. You're also doing some covering condies, which is this, right? This is where the support comes in, right? Because if your condies get cleared, it's no big deal. So that is like the only use for sharper images, right? Other than that, yeah, not much else to say. Master Fencer, again, it's just like critical infusion. You're gonna get Fury, makes you crit more. The only difference is you get this anytime you strike someone that is below 75%. 90% of the time when you do your burst, you will hit this and trigger it. It has 5-second duration, 5-second cooldown. It's always up. It's good. We want this. And we get this a lot. So that's the dueling trait line for the default trait. Now let's go over the traits we choose and why we choose them, and we can go over alternatives. So this is Duelist Discipline. Pistol attacks from you and your illusions have a chance to cause bleeding. More cover condi, so again, it's not bad, and it's extra damage, and it's just something else that the enemy has to deal with, but it's not much value. But the next part is makes this trait mandatory. This is one of the only few mandatory traits that you have to have this when you run this build, and that is interrupting a foe recharges pistol skills. This triggers off of your clones, And this is huge. This basically makes it so your magic bullet, which is one of the best skills we have and can use, is always going to be up. And it also makes sure that Phantasmal Duelist, which is a very, very high damaging skill, and this is a very hard skill for the enemy player to deal with, because it does a lot of damage over time. It does 8 hits, so they can, a lot of times when they dodge, and they're going to dodge too early, and the end tail of this ability is still going to hit them. It also does 3 hits when you fire it, so it has 2 parts to itself. The 3 hits come from you, and then the 8 hits comes from the phantasm that you summon. And so Duelist Discipline makes sure that both of these skills are almost always going to be up. So we have to keep in mind that this is going to be the first of many skills that is based on interrupting the enemy. And so interrupts play a huge part in this build, and it's what makes this build so much fun to play, in my opinion. So next we have the middle tree, which is, I go Fencer's Finesse because it gives me an edge with Blurred Frenzy and Illusionary Leap. When I fight other Mesmers, if they don't have Fencer's Finesse, then my Blurred Frenzy will come up faster than theirs. So it's just a slight little edge. It doesn't really make too much of a difference. I try to incorporate Blurred Frenzy into my burst rotation because it hits 8 times really fast, and so it gives 8 stacks of Fencer's Finesse, with each stack giving 15 ferocity. So it adds more damage right when I need more damage, which is during my burst. And the max is 10 stacks. You could go evasive mirror, but and I have tried evasive mirror in a lot of matches, but I've never noticed it working when I really needed it to work. My idea was, I go evasive mirror and I can dodge during a ranger's longbow 2. Their rapid fire, but I've never had success with it. I think the cooldown is way too high and the actual duration is way too low, so you can't really control it, and you can't really get it when you need it the most. So that's why I kind of opted out of it. And then you could also go Blinding Dissipation. This is really good because it turns Cry of Frustration, which is like useless right now, as a power Mirage, and it turns Cry of Frustration into an offensive CC and a defensive CC, because if you get caught and you get CC'd or stunned, then you can pop Cry of Frustration if you notice like it's a Soul Beast and they're about to pop Maul on you. And that's always good. So I would say that honestly this is the best choice, but if you're feeling a little bit more aggressive, then go Fencer's Finesse. And then if you really want to like risk it and try for that high value reaction play, go for Evasive Mirror. So it's kind of your whatever you want to choose here, whatever your preference. And then the last trait line for dueling is Deceptive Evasion. We only have one dodge as a Mirage. ArenaNet, in their infinite wisdom, decided that was the way to balance Mirage and PvP. So this just kind of, for me, is also mandatory, because when you're on sword, your sword ambush creates a clone by itself when you use it, and then so when you pair it with this trait, whenever you're on sword pistol and you dodge, you get 2 clones, and that's just really good to have. It keeps up the Mirage tempo. It also makes it so when you are on Greatsword and you dodge, you're going to get 2 split surges, because as soon as your clone spawns, they're going to spawn with a Mirage Cloak on them because of our traits in Mirage. And so they're also going to do their ambush. And so the idea is we want to go in, we're interrupting, we're all over the place, and then not only are we all over the place, we are also swapping places with our clones. So people just see a lot of clones, and they quickly lose track of where we are, what we're doing, and who we're focused on. And so this creates a lot of pressure and a bit of chaos in team fights, and it makes people kind of hesitate because they really don't know where you are. It's really cool when you play the spec well, because you will find that people will literally lose track of you, and a lot of times they'll go after your clones. But it all comes together in how you play it. So let's go over the next trait line, which is domination. So inflict vulnerability when you interrupt a foe. Again, this is our second trait now based on interrupts. Okay, which this just means more damage. We're going to do more damage when we interrupt people during our burst, and that's always a good thing. This also makes it so our team does more damage. So again, it's vulnerability, and that's its value right there, right? We have dazzling, dazing, or stunning a foe also applies vulnerability. So this dazzling plus illusion of vulnerability is really good, because our Mirage thrust is a daze. So what this means is if we get an interrupt with our Mirage thrust, that is 8 vulnerability right there. Now, if you notice this interval, 3 seconds, 3 seconds, keep that in mind, because all of the traits have the same internal cooldown, which is 3 seconds. So they all line up perfectly, and so all you really have to keep in mind as you fight as a Mirage is that 3-second rule, because if you evade and use your ambush too quickly back to back, if you chain them too quickly back to back, you'll lose out on a lot of value, because the cooldown hasn't reset. So 3 seconds is kind of like, it's long enough to breathe, and then that's it. You know, it's you notice it, but then it's gone. So just keep it in mind. That's the only thing I would say about that. Then we get fragility, and this just feeds into dazzling and illusion of vulnerability. Which is we deal increased strike damage for each stack of vulnerability on our target. And we're putting a lot of vulnerability on our target. Our target is almost always going to be at 25 stacks of vulnerability, and that's what you want to try to aim for, around there, during your burst. It's not the end of the world if you don't get it, so don't try to wait on 25 stacks, but almost always your target during your burst is going to have, I would say, between 15 and 25 stacks of vulnerability. So this just sets you up to do super damage. So now let's go over the traits that we chose for domination. Bountiful Blades. This is a no-brainer, I feel. We're running Greatsword as our one of our weapons. This improves Greatsword. Best abilities for Greatsword even better. It makes the second best ability for Greatsword even better, so we have to take it, more or less. This is kind of mandatory, in the sense that if you try to take, like, these other traits, they're kind of good, but you have a Greatsword, so make it better, right? You lose out on a lot if you don't take Bountiful Blades. You kind of are gimping yourself on this build. Then we take Furious Interruption. So again, on an interrupt, 3-second cooldown. This creates a lot of momentum for you, because when you interrupt, if you interrupt on your Greatsword, you can get a Phantasmal Berserker and a Mirror Blade off inside those 2 seconds. So it's really, really fast. If you get an interrupt on your Sword Pistol, then you can quickly, because of this, you can quickly do the Sword Auto. And keep in mind, the Sword Auto, the last hit, Mind Spike, does a shit ton of fucking damage. Excuse my language, but I mean, you will hit people and it'll be, I think the highest I've gotten was like 4,000 or something. And this is usually by the time you're hitting them with the third auto, you'll be hitting a mind rack too, or you'll be hitting a cry of frustration. So it's even more damage on top of more damage. So just keep that in mind. We want this. I know a lot of people would go here. This is a good choice. I would not say that this is a bad choice at all. But my preference is I want to stack my interrupts. And I think my cat, give me a second. My dog's chasing my cat again. I'm sorry. uh, So yeah, I want to stack all of the traits on interrupts as I can, because when I score interrupts, that just means that a lot of momentum is getting transferred my way in a fight. Okay, and then the last trait you're gonna see really locks it in, and that is power block. This trait I honestly think is overpowered. I think they should nerf this trait, if I'm being completely honest, because so this trait affects anything with a cooldown, right? So when you interrupts deal damage, and this is quite a bit of damage. It's not too big, but at the same time, it's nothing to ignore either. And damage is damage. That's what I always say. So interrupts deal damage and inflict weakness. That's good, because as a power, you're going to see the gear that we choose. We only have 16,000, barely 16,000. We're just shy of that. So anytime we can inflict weakness on our enemies is always a good thing, because our number one weakness is burst, counter burst against us. Okay, so interrupts deal damage and inflict weakness. Enemy skills that you interrupt have an increased cooldown. This is the overpowered part. So anything that has a cooldown, right? And even things that you wouldn't normally associate, I guess. So this happened to me literally one time, but my Mirage thrust, I actually got power blocked in the middle of my Mirage thrust. So because it has a cooldown, that cooldown became 15 seconds instead of the regular. Normally, when you interrupt someone's ability, that ability on, I believe, a 4-second cooldown before they can use it. This makes it 15. So if you interrupt someone's heal, they can't use that heal for 15 seconds now. If you interrupt one of their key burst abilities or their key rotation abilities, that it just completely disrupts their entire rhythm. And for 15 seconds, that's essentially a team fight. If someone's at 20% health and they go for a heal and you interrupt it because of power block, now they can't use that heal. They're at 20% health for 15 seconds. That's a free kill right there. That your team should be able to secure that kill easy, and so that transfers momentum onto your team. So this is just an amazing trait. When you combine it with all the other traits, it flows very nicely, and you get a lot of momentum anytime you score an interrupt. So that's the name of the game, right? We're trying to score interrupts. We're trying to disrupt our opponents in team fights. We're trying to distract. The thing about a Mirage is you kind of want the enemy team to focus you, and then you dance around them as you do your thing, because when we get to this trait line, everything really will come together. Because remember, as a Mirage, your dodge doesn't interrupt your flow or your actions. So you can evade and defend as you're attacking. So it makes it so your timing is completely different than any other class that people face in PvP. So as a Mirage, let's go over the default traits. Mirage Cloak, that's obvious. You press it, it does that. Nothing can hurt you. I mean, what more is there to say? It gives you your ambushes. Now, trick for ambushes is you can dodge and swap and do an ambush. So you can do something like this. See, so even though I dodged on the sword pistol, I swapped my weapon, and my greatsword ambush was still available. Your ambush is going to be available, I think, for like 1 or 2 seconds after you dodge. So there is a delay that you can have. So I can either do something like this, right, and dodge immediately, or I can do something like this. See, I kind of gave it that little delay. So it just means that you can play with your timing a bit and be even more deceptive. Okay, so that's Mirage Cloak. Nomad's Endurance, Shatter skills give Vigor, and Vigor grants condition damage. This helps our traits up here, right? We do more condition damage, free damage, it's cool, not really a big deal. Vigor is the best part. More Vigor, more dodges, more ambushes, more everything, right? So again, it's just all around good. And this is kind of useless. I always felt that this should just have been default on Mirage Cloak, because this puts Mirage Cloak on equal footing with a dodge mobility wise. The only niche thing I would say about this is you can use this to kind of, since Mirages can't dodge jump, right? And dodge jump is kind of like a niche technique. Sorry, I've been saying that word the whole time. A niche technique, and Mirages can't do it. You kind of get like a ghetto dodge jump, because as you jump you can dodge, and you'll get that extra jump length like this. Just something like that, that's all. And without that, whoops, see, without that I kind of don't make the jump, but with it I'll do it again. I make the jump, just that little extra bit. So that's a trick you can do with it. Now let's go to the traits that we choose. Self-deception. So whenever we have a clone active and we use any deception skill, of which we have Jaunt, so that's 2 charges right there, which is 2 clones, and we have Illusionary Ambush, that's 1 clone, and then we have False Oasis, and that's another clone. So these 3 skills will each summon a clone, if we already have at least 1 clone active. This makes your flow and your rotation and your shatters that much more deadlier, and it helps with losing enemy players that try to focus you. Because they can get tripped up as you jaunt away. Because from their perspective, like if you combine decoy, your stealth, with a jaunt, from their perspective, you will have disappeared. Actually, from their perspective, they probably will just see you standing, and they'll mix up your clone. They'll see your clone standing there, and they'll assume it's you because you would have gone into stealth, and they won't be able to see that unless they're very perceptive. Because decoy has its own tells that you can, as a mesmer and as an enemy player, you can look out for. But we'll get into that later. So yeah, self-deception. That's why I take it. You take it if you want to be aggressive. Renewing Oasis you take if you want to be defensive, because it helps with condies, conditions, and you're going to see that this spec has no real answer for conditions except to not get hit by conditions. So if you ever do find yourself playing this spec and you see a bunch of red conditions, you just got condi bombed, and there's not really much you can do about that, except just pray that someone has you covered with condi cleanse. So yeah, Renewing Oasis if you want to be defensive, Self-Deception if you want to be aggressive, and then Riddle of Sand if you are playing Condi Mirage, but don't play Condi Mirage because that's bad. Play Power Mirage because it's better. Then we take Desert Distortion. This makes our distortion very high value because when we have 3 clones, it will make 3 mirrors, which if you don't know what a Mirage mirror is, it's just this. You're going to see it right here. That's it right there. It'll make 3 of those. Every time you run into one, you get a free dodge. So distortion by itself, when you do a 3 clone, will last 4 seconds, 3 or 4 seconds. Then after those 3 or 4 seconds, you can if your mirrors are spaced correctly, because you can do a lot with mirrors, but if your mirrors are spaced correctly, you can run into them as you continue your attack against your opponents, and it essentially creates this window where for like 5, 6, 7 seconds you're completely kind of immune to conditions, to damage, to crowd control, to a lot of stuff. So it creates this window where you can change momentum in team fights, and make a difference, whether that's by downing or stomping an enemy player, or disrupting like a Scourge, or a Tempest, or an Ellie like a healer or something like that, or a Guardian. So that's why we take Desert Distortion. Mirage Mantle sounds good on paper, but the reality is this only works when you get hit. Because if you have protection but you're not getting hit, that protection is useless. So you might as well not even have protection. So protection only works if you're getting hit. But if you're getting hit as a Mirage, you're probably dying. So we don't want to get hit, so that's why we don't take this. And then we're not using Axe, so there's no reason to take this. So really that leaves, this is a good tree for Power Mirages. I guess good or bad depending on how you look at it, but it's good. I think it's good because the trait we kind of have to take is the trait that we want to take anyways, and it's very high value. So Desert Distortion is very, very good, and even if it wasn't good, we kind of have to take it anyways. And then the last one, mandatory as well. Just it's pretty much on the same level as Duelist Discipline. If you don't take it, you're really gimping yourself. You're really breaking the build, and that's Infinite Horizon. When you gain Mirage Cloak, your illusions also gain it. So I'll just kill this warrior real quick just to demonstrate. When I dodge and use my Split Surge, my clone is also going to use it. So I think you should see like 12 stacks of vulnerability. Let's see. Oh no, my clone targeted the wrong one. 1 second. There we go. So you see, so because I dodged and I created a clone, and my clone had Mirage Cloak from Infinite Horizon, it used its ambush. So you see 18 stacks from just using Illusionary Ambush right there. Alright, excuse that because that caught me off guard. But as you can see, the more you dodge, the more clones you create, the more you use your deception skills, the more clones you create, the more ambushes your clones are able to do, and so it creates this flow where you are quickly getting 3 clones, you're shattering, you're quickly getting 3 clones, you're shattering, you're quickly getting 3 clones, so on and so forth. And you can do this for a fair bit of the fight, but eventually what happens is you will get pressured out. This is probably a good time to go over the gear so we can go over the weaknesses and the strengths. Because what happens is like you only have one dodge, so you can only evade for so long before you run out of dodges to do. And so when that happens, it's really bad because you're kind of standing there naked and you can't really get out, you can't really go in, you can't really be aggressive, and you're open and vulnerable to counterburst and to crowd control, and it's just not a good time. And so just keep that in mind, that when you're in a team fight, you're kind of like on a timer. And if you can't do the things you need to do during that timer, then you need to feel that out, and you need to get out before you run out of defensive evades and stuff. So let's go over the gear and what we choose and why we choose it. Okay, so we take Rune of the Lynx. This is my preference. I think this is meta for Power Mirage build, but I'm not sure. But I take it for the movement speed. I think you could take, it's between this and Traveler. If you want to do more like defensive, more well-rounded, then just take Traveler. Right, so Traveler, increased boon duration, which is small, 5%, but it's still better than nothing. All stats, and same thing, more condition duration and 25% movement speed. This build doesn't really have any swiftness, but it is still highly mobile. So the permanent passive 25% movement speed just helps, and that's why I take it. I notice that when I don't have this, I get annoyed that I can't run as fast. So that's why I always take this. And then we go Assassin Amulet. The reason we go Assassin is because we just always want to crit. It's that simple. The better. The more we crit, the more we deal bonus damage. The higher our burst is, the more pressure we can create. And as you can see, with Fury and Assassin Amulet, we get 82% crit chance, which is nice, and we want that. Then we go Sigil of Energy. That's default, mandatory. It gives us more endurance, more dodges, more ambushes, so on and so forth. For my greatsword, the second sigil I take is Purging, because the one condition that seems to be the most annoying, because it lasts the longest, and it's not readily apparent what it does, is Immobilize. Because remember, when you're immobilized, you cannot dodge if you're a regular class. Now, as a Mirage, you can still do it. You can still dodge. But as a regular class, Immobilize prevents dodging. So, but it's not a hard CC. You can still use other skills when you're immobilized. So that's what makes it kind of special in that regard. And so I found that when I take this sigil, it kind of counters that immobilize, because usually the classes that are casting immobilize on you are rangers with their elite skills and stuff. So this helps. I've been in situations where like I've had like a 10-second stack of immobilize on me or whatever, and because of this sigil, I got out of it. So that's why I take this sigil. It helps for, or if there's like a 7 stack of burning, this helps. But honestly, you can take whatever sigil you want. This is like free for all. Whatever you want to do, whatever you think works best for you, take it. And then for my sword pistol, again, it's Sigil of Energy. This is another edge. I take Sigil of Savagery, 30% stun duration, which is Magic Bullet, we're going to go over these skills in a second. Magic Bullet Sigil of Savagery. It makes that stun very, very, very good. This makes it, I do believe, so that you can pop Magic Bullet and you cast Phantasmal Duelist, and then, especially, keep in mind that Magic Bullet is a crowd control, it's a stun, so if you get an interrupt, then you're going to get all of these traits, which means Furious Interruption, which means that you can pop a Magic Bullet, and as they're still stunned from that Magic Bullet, you will get off your Phantasmal Duelist, and then you can also Illusionary Leap onto them as well. And just as this stun is clearing, you can, this is a double skill, when it flips, you can hit the flipped button, and that will immobilize them for another 2 seconds. So it kind of traps them in this 5-second window where, they're vulnerable to counterburst, to getting down, to getting stomped, and Magic Bullet is AoE. So what makes Magic Bullet special is that whenever someone is trying to res a downed opponent, Magic Bullet will interrupt both of them because it will hit both of them and ricochet, or as it ricochets. So that's the gear, that's the traits. Let's go over the skills now. Let's find the dummy. The golem over here. Okay, so the skills, your shatters, mind rack, that's your biggest one. Cry of Frustration, this is your most useless one because it doesn't really do anything. But it does add cover and add a little bit more pressure, and it gives vigor. This is the one you want to use like if you want to prep for a fight, so to speak. So like if I'm running to a point and my dodge is like, I noticed that my dodge bar is like almost filled, I'll pop this to get that extra vigor, to give it that little bit of extra boost so I get that dodge just a little bit faster. So something like this, right? Like I'm noticing it's slowly filling up. I'm like, let's say I'm running to a capture point or there's an enemy on it or whatever. I need my dodge. I pop that, boom. It just, so that's how you would use that. And then also if you're ever in a position where this is on cooldown, you have 3 clones and you need to do damage, then just use Cry of Frustration, no big deal. You have Diversion. This is another daze. If you notice, this build has a lot of dazes attached to it. So because of the trait, what was it? Dazzling. Anytime we're gonna apply. So that is on Diversion. That's on Magic Bullet. Not on Illusionary Wave though, because that's a knockback. It is on Mirage Thrust as well. So a lot of, as you can see, this build puts out a lot of vulnerability. So on Greatsword, we have Diversion and then Distortion. Okay, so Distortion. So as a Mirage, your shatters don't change at all. They just kind of get enhanced. So it's still the same Distortion. When you pop it with 3 clones, you get 4 seconds of immune to everything, God status. And then, as we went over before, each clone, as you pop Distortion, will create their own Mirage Mirror. So the skills. This is your auto attack, Spatial Surge. Use this when you can. It's that simple. If you notice that, like, if there's like a warrior or an engineer or a guardian, and they don't really like have ranged against you, right? Especially the 1,200 range, and they're like, kind of like staying on point. One of the biggest mistakes that I've had to correct myself making is doing this, right? There's a warrior right there he wants me to come into melee range, right? So he can do his stuff, and this is what I do. You see, I run right up to him, and I let him get off his stuff, and then I end up dying if I get surprised or can't react in time. When the reality is, if he's on point, you can harass. Spatial Surge is just the best harass tool in PvP, or it's one of the best, because if they don't want to move, well, you just play that game with them and keep popping off on them. And then when you want to go in, you know, you go in with your Mirror Blade, your Mind Stab, and your Phantasmal Berserker. So Mirror Blade, you can throw, if there's an ally or two enemies, then you can throw Mirror Blade. I mean, the thing about Mirror Blade is you can kind of throw it whenever because it's 8 seconds, so it's not that long of a cooldown, but try not to waste it. It's not a big deal if you do end up wasting it, and this is what I mean by wasting it. Need to find an enemy that's by themselves. So, watch. This Mirror Blade is not going to bounce. It's going to create a clone on the Mesmer. Throw an illusionary blade that creates a clone at its first target and then bounces to enemies and allies, dealing less damage to foes per hit and granting might to allies. Let's lower this a bit. Okay, so if I throw it from far away, it unfortunately does not bounce to the clone, so it's only going to hit them once. It bounced to that. It bounced to that clone. So, as you can see, it does bounce to your allies. Oh no. Promise I'm better than that. I'm just trying to show specific stuff, so I'm out of my rotation. Okay, so if you do throw this at somebody and they're by themselves, like this one over here, I should have done this the first time. It won't bounce to your clone, so I will demonstrate that. I'm just not having any luck today. Here, you know what? I'm gonna try on the boss. There we go. Okay, so I'm gonna try it on the. I'm gonna show you on the boss, and then I'm going to run away, so I don't have to fight it. You see, one hit, just one hit. It doesn't bounce. It does create a clone, but it doesn't bounce. So you want it to bounce as many times as possible between you and your opponent. If it bounces to allies, that's okay, but you want it to bounce to yourself. Oh shit. I'll show you here. I'm gonna die. I didn't die. That's cool. Alright, so what you want to do is, if you really want to pop off with Mirror Blade, is the basic Mesmer combo, which is just you Mirror Blade, you blink in, you Mind Rack, and what's going to end up happening is the Mirror Blade is going to bounce between, hopefully between you and your opponent a bunch of times, causing a lot of damage that's unblockable. It's going to get, you're going to hit your opponent with a 2-clone Mind Rack, or a 1-clone, no, excuse me, a 1-clone Mind Rack. The basic Mesmer combo. Mirror Blade, blink in, Mind Rack. So it's just going to go something like this. Or, oops, 1 second. Here, I'll show you. Just something quick, easy like that. Now, from there, what makes Mesmer and specifically Mirage special is the things you can do with, you can add a lot on top of that. Okay, so as Mirage, you can dodge, as after you blink, which will create another clone. Okay, and then you can jaunt after you blink again and again. This, you can do this all while you're casting Mirror Blade, by the way, which will create another clone. And now this happens. Just like that, basically, more or less. It's always kind of random what Mirror Blade decides to do after you throw it, but generally speaking, if you're close enough, especially like if you blink on top of them, or something like that right here, if you're like right there, Mirror Blade will just go really fast. And it creates a lot of damage. Again, that's unblockable. And because you jaunted and you dodged, you now have 3 clones that you can hit a Mind Rack with, which is more damage. And then, because you dodged, your ambush is up, so you can hit them with a Split Surge. And because you dodged and created a clone, chances are that clone is also going to do an ambush. So I'll try to do it again. And so part of being a good Mesmer, a good Mirage, a good Chrono, I feel, is how you do these combos, essentially. It's just little stuff like that. How can you combine these abilities that don't have cast times into abilities that do have cast times? And then as Mirage, you get that extra layer, because now you can cover all of your abilities anytime with a dodge. So if I'm using Mirror Blade, I'll show you, I'll dodge in the middle of casting Mirror Blade. See, so that prevents my Mirror Blade from getting interrupted. It protects me, and then as Mirror Blade is going off, I immediately am going into a Split Surge, which is my ambush, which gives me might and does vulnerability on the target. And this is Split Surge right here. Okay, fires those 3 beams. Your clones fire 3 beams, and each of those beams can hit 3 people. And the beams can converge. What makes Split Surge really, really good is, I'll show you. Let me get out of combat so I can hover over this. What makes Split Surge really, really good is downed opponents. Whenever an opponent is downed and someone is trying to res them, you can Split Surge, and chances are the Split Surge will hit both of them, and it just will do a lot of damage because they're stacked on top of each other. So you want a lot of enemies that are stacked closely together, and your Split Surge will do a lot of damage, and I will show you. As a Mesmer, on Greatsword, you always want to target the furthest opponent, because your beam is like a lightning chain, and so I'll show you what I mean by that. See, as you move, the beam moves with it. So you just target the first person, you miss out on everything. So you're always looking to target the very furthest person right there. And then so this is just a regular auto attack. Now when I do my Split Surge, you're just going to see a lot of numbers. It's way too many numbers for me to count, so just enjoy. So you see stuff like that. If you notice that this is just, it's amazing cleave, it's amazing down cleave. Not only is it amazing down cleave, but you can mix in your illusionary wave to disrupt. If you're losing, let's say like you have like 2 people resing 1 person, and so your Split Surge damage probably won't be able to keep up with that. Well, as you Split Surge, now you can run up or jaunt in and you can do your illusionary wave. Which a quick tip and trick about illusionary wave is, if you want to make your illusionary wave have a 1200 range, all you have to do, again, this is the cool part of being a Mesmer, is you can combine all these abilities, blink, jaunt, decoy, that don't have a cast time. All your shatters, they don't have a cast time. You can combine them with all of your abilities that do have a cast time. So you're going to see, I'll use this golem right there. I'll target that one. and I'm going to Illusionary Wave, and as in the middle of casting that, I'm going to blink in. Just like that. And so that is a very good opener. It's a very good disruptor when the enemy team is trying to res your opponents. So yeah, and so we went over Spatial Surge, Split Surge, Mirror Blade. Mind Stab is just good for the cripple. That's what it is. It's AoE, it's damage, it's cripple. You mainly want it for the cripple. When people are crippled, they tend to dodge more. That's just kind of how it works. So this is good if you want to prevent someone from escaping. It's good if you want to apply pressure, because generally after a Mind Stab, people are going to expect either a Mirror Blade or a Phantasmal Berserker. It's just like I said, it just applies that, it's a nice little graphic to look at. So as you do it, it's that sword that comes up. So on the opponent's screen, it kind of just shocks them into that something is coming. Then your Phantasmal Berserker, same thing. Now the cool thing about Phantasmal Berserker and Phantasmal Duelist, you don't need line of sight. So abuse that as much as you can. For instance, if you go in with a sword, or let's say you want to run away. As you're running away, boom, you just hit him with that. Okay. Same thing with Phantasmal Berserker. If you're running away, there you go. Still works. So you don't need line of sight for Phantasmal Berserker or Phantasmal Duelist. And again, Illusionary Wave, you're using that as a knockdown. You can use this to knock thieves out of their smoke fields, which is really good because when they use their smoke field, if they get knocked out of it, it will reveal them, so they can't stealth again unless they're a Deadeye and they have their elite Shadow Meld or whatever, because that removes reveal. So this is just really good because it's a point blank frontal cone AoE knockback. So you can perform sweeps with it, like if you're approaching a point, and you think a thief is there, or you think a thief is going to be somewhere. It's the same thing with Mind Stab. If you burst a thief low and they stealth, and you can kind of predict where you think they're going to be, just hit it. Just hit it, and chances are, if you get them, and it kills them, it's enough to down them, then there you go. Because that is a good segue into one of the biggest weaknesses as a Mesmer. So when we move over to Sword and Pistol, this is a really big issue. So this one right here, auto-targeting. You don't want auto-targeting on, because if it is on, you cannot escape with Mirage Thrust, because as you go to Mirage Thrust, it will pick a target and then you will Mirage Thrust to that target. So if you go in and you're like, oh shit, I need to get out, boom, right there, you can do that. But if auto-targeting is on, you cannot do that. On the flip side, if you're fighting a thief or a Mesmer or anyone that breaks target a lot or goes into stealth a lot, like Dragon Hunters, then you have to keep in mind that when you're on your Greatsword, if you don't have a target, your Split Surge will not do anything. That was my clones. See? My actual Split Surge did nothing. See? It does. So there have been times that I've lost track in the middle of team fights or something, and I'll be spamming my Split Surge and I don't see the beams, and I kind of am hard on myself because it's not auto-targeting for me. So you just have to keep that in mind, that you always, for Greatsword, you always want to target. You always want to target. But for Sword and Pistol, you have to be ready to click off a target if you feel that you need to escape. So with that, let's go back into sword and pistol. So again, your auto attack on sword, this is it. You're looking for that thrust at the end. That is what's going to do a lot of damage. It also removes spoons. So it's good. Now, if it removes boons, it won't do the extra damage. But again, you're still getting value because if there's a boon, you want to remove it kind of anyways. So, and then if there's not a boon, it's going to do extra damage. On downed opponents, this is a really strong auto attack chain. Here you have Blurred Frenzy. It's just that it doesn't do a lot of damage in PvP. But it is an extra dodge. It's a 1 second evade. So just keep that in mind. You don't have to use it offensively. It definitely builds up the stacks, like I said. You just hit that and it'll build up 8 stacks. It hits 8 times if all of those are crits, more or less, which they should be. And then, like I said, it's also a dodge. Illusionary Leap. I don't believe you need line of sight either. Let's test it out. Oh, well, it just, it turns me, so you do need line of sight. So Illusionary Leap, you do need line of sight, but it spawns a clone. That clone will cripple them, and then you can swap places with that clone. The swap does not need line of sight. There we go, right there. Accidentally used blink. So this is really good for elevation. I'll show you on this Elementalist. As long as your clone can kind of, as long as like, I think it works as long as kind of like you yourself can are able to run to your opponent or walk there, then your clone will get summoned there. So I think it should work here, and let's see if that does. Right there, see? And then I swap. So again, just keep that in mind. We don't. Your blinks are not really good at elevation because you kind of have to change your camera around. So like, you see, I'm kind of right there. Game. Whoops, sorry, I was talking without pressing. I pushed the talk key. A lot of times, I was saying a lot of times that when I go to teleport high, I have to pan my camera low so the game picks it up, and then I'm able to kind of do it like that, depending on the distance. But with Illusionary Leap, you don't have to do that. As long as you have your target highlighted, you can, and you're within range, it will spawn the clone there. It's the same thing with Illusionary Ambush. That time it didn't work because Illusionary Ambush is always a gamble. But Illusionary Ambush is really good at elevation too when it's working. But Illusionary Ambush kind of doesn't like to work sometimes. So, but we'll go over that when we get to it. As you can see, Illusionary Leap, or not Illusionary Leap, Mirage Thrust can be used to cross a lot of terrain that you wouldn't normally be able to cross. So let's get into that. So Mirage Thrust is an ambush. We lunge at our foe. There's a pro and a con to this. It's an interrupt. When your clones get it, that's 4 interrupts. Each one will give 5 vulnerability. So that's 20 stacks right there. Even if they don't get interrupts, because remember it's a daze, so their vulnerability gets applied on a daze. So because it's they're dazing with their ambush, that's 20 stacks when you do it with 3 clones. The bad thing is it locks you in place when you're in the air. So when you're in the air, there's only a select few of abilities that you can use. You can't blink, you can't jaunt. I don't think you can decoy. Let's try it. No, you see? So I'm jumping, I can't decoy. Same thing when I'm doing my Mirage Thrust. While I'm in the air, I can't decoy. I'll show you. Oh, whoops, I guess you can. Alright, well, guess you can if you do it, if you're quick enough, if you're really quick enough. You can't do illusionary leap while you're in the air. You can't do any of these. Pretty much anything with a cast time you can't do while you're in the air. And then blink and jaunt are the exception because you have to be touching the ground to use those abilities. So I'll show you that. See, it blinked after. As soon as I touched, it blinked. So that's just something to know. You can, however, shatter while you're in the air, which is really fun and really hilarious because if you have 3 clones, let's go back to the dummies so you can really see this. If you have 3 clones, right, and they're running up and people are losing track, even if they're greatsword or whatever, and you do your Mirage Thrust and you shatter, remember you can shatter mid-air, it's going to look something like this, you become like a flying mesmer bomb. Just like that. And you can kind of surprise people with that because like I said, all your clones will do it, and then when they reach there, they'll shatter because that's queued up for them. So that's just something to keep in mind too. So your shatters are really, really good to use during Mirage Thrust. If you spam Mirage Thrust too much, it's going to look something like this. You see? So the ambushes have their own kind of internal cooldown. So even though I ran through the Mirage mirrors, I really only got like 1 or 2 Mirage Thrust off from them. So I kind of lost value. So that just plays a part into spacing. That's that 3-second rule, more or less. You kind of want to interrupt something like this. Then you kind of like, you know, you count to yourself. 1, 2, and then you do your illusionary ambush. And that's your other, you see? So then you get your traits again, you know, and then hopefully by that time maybe your dodge is up. Boom, another, you see, and then so you kind of have to space it out, but then at the same time you have to use them offensively and defensively depending on what your opponent is doing. So you're kind of paying attention to your opponent as well. So that's what makes Mirage fun. Phantasmal Duelist. This is just, like I said before, high damage, very, very high damage, and you'll see, this is what it looks like. You get the 3 bullets that hit, and then summons a Phantasm, then that Phantasm becomes a clone. You see? And then you can dodge when that Phantasm becomes a clone, and that's your interrupt. You can use your illusions to cover your actions as well. So let's say I want to do a chain. Or here, I'll do something like this. There we go. So you see how I kind of staggered my interrupt to be kind of behind my illusions. So that just increases the window because if you and your illusions all hit at the same time, that only gives you kind of like 1 window to interrupt. But if your illusions and clones hit with Mirage Thrust and then like a couple like half a second later you hit, chances are that if your opponent tried to wait to use an ability and now they're using that ability, well, there's your interrupt that's coming because you staggered it. So that's something else to remember. And then the last ability is Magic Bullet. Magic Bullet is just kind of overpowered as well, if I'm being honest. It ricochets. It does everything. It stuns, it dazes, it applies blindness on the third hit. Um, and so yeah, it's just overall good. You want to hit. It doesn't really matter who you aim it at. Like if you are targeting a downed opponent and you magic bullet, like I said, it's gonna interrupt both the reser and the downed person because it ricochets twice. And on the first two, it stuns and then dazes. When you're setting up your burst, like I said, you can pop in stealth, open with magic bullet, something like that, right? It's just, yeah, there's nothing really else to say about magic bullet. Use it when you want to start up your combos and stuff. It's amazing. Then we go over to here. False Oasis. It's really like the best heal we have as a Mirage, and it plays into our self deception. So when we use it, we get a clone, and that's always nice. And then it gives us an extra dodge because it creates a Mirage mirror. So again, we play around that because that's an extra dodge, and it gives us vigor, more endurance, more dodges. So there's not really too much. There's not really too many other heals I would recommend. You could have mirror again if you want to go for those like really high value reactionary plays where like you're anticipating a ranger or a renegade or something, or even like a dragon hunter, right? Because they use longbows now. Then you can go for mirror, but other than that, it's like false oasis is kind of number one. The other ones just aren't really worth it, in my opinion. Not in PvP, anyways. Not for Mirage. Decoy and Illusionary Ambush are two skills that you can swap, but I use them because for me, that is where I get a lot of my plays from. So Decoy is just good because it's a break free. So if you get CC'd, it's right there. You can use it. Not only is it a break free, it's a stun, which again, it's good. Stealth, or not stun. It's a stealth, and stealth is always good in PvP because your opponents can't see you, and it allows you to escape or set up ambushes. And it creates a clone, again, further distracting and confusing your opponent. But you can really pick anything you want, if you notice, where is it? If you notice that the enemy team, like if you're in 2v2 or 3v3 or whatever, and the enemy team has a lot of range, you can get feedback instead of decoy. And that's pretty much why I take decoy. I like the way I play as a roamer. I like being able to slip in and out of combat, and decoy lets me do that. Illusionary ambush, when it decides to work, is beautiful because it's a D target, so it breaks the your enemy's target on you. It swaps you in a position with your clone, and if you know how to use it right, which I will tell you right now, it completely you have a lot of fun using this ability. So the best thing about Illusionary Ambush is, let me get some clones. Okay, so the best thing about Illusionary Ambush is after you pop it, don't move. And see, now your opponent doesn't know who you are because you've swapped places with your clones. You've broke their targeting. And if you don't move, if you just do the exact same things your clones would do, if you act like a clone, pretend you're a clone, then a lot of times they'll run right past you. They honestly will. Because picking out the true mesmer among their clones is kind of like a skill you have to develop. There's certain things you have to look out for. Certain buffs that only the true mesmer will have. And once you know which buffs apply to the true mesmer but not to their clones, then it becomes a little bit easier. But there's still, you'd be surprised how many people, after I use an illusionary ambush, they kind of lose track of me. So, but you have to stay still. Act like a clone. Remember, you're acting like a clone. So it's going to be like this. See? You just stand still. If you start moving, then they're going to know it's you, and they're going to be able to pick you out. Illusionary Ambush will teleport you. It's random where it teleports you, but a good majority of the time, it will teleport you behind somebody. It's a good chasing skill, too, because as someone's running away, so let's say someone's running away down there, right? And I kind of lose line of sight. Illusionary Ambush doesn't require line of sight, so I can Illusionary Ambush, and there's a good chance I will be teleported down here, in front of them or to the side of them as they're running. So it's a really good chasing tool. It's a good defensive tool as well. You can use it. It doesn't break stun. It's not a break free, but you can use it while you are CC'd. And I will demonstrate that over here. You can use your blinks as your CC too, which is really good. So everyone knows the bear. He's going to run me over. And see, I moved and I used it. Okay. Alright, so now we have Blink and Jaunt. And again, thanks for staying with me this long. I know it's been a long video, and I'm not editing it at all. But hopefully, if you've listened this far, you've learned a couple of things. And there's still like a couple more things left to go. A couple little tips and tricks, but hopefully you learned something new. So Blink is hands down the best spell in the game for PvP. It's break free. It's a 1200 range teleport, and you should learn how to abuse it, most definitely. Look up videos on maps on where exactly to teleport and how you can make your blink more effective, but it's just all around good. You would be surprised at the things you can blink to. Remember, if you can walk to it, you can blink to it. That's the rule. So I think I should be able to blink all the way up there. Yep, just like that. So a person without a blink, if they're chasing me and I get here, they have to run all the way up those stairs to now catch me. And I just have to blink. And because I blinked up, I can also blink down as well. So you have to kind of open your eyes a little bit to see how you can use blink in those ways, because when you do use blink in those ways, that you will find that you are able to maneuver around the map and around your enemies a lot easier. And the same thing with Jaunt. So Jaunt is just a shorter blink. The thing about Jaunt is it does damage, applies confusion. So if you're a Condi Mesmer, that's good. It removes conditions. It removes one condition. So that's like your other Condi cleanse right there, right? You have the one from the Sigil and then 2 from Jaunt. So for 3 conditions, you're kind of covered, more or less. And Jaunt creates a clone because of our traits. So if I'm in combat and I have a clone and then I jaunt, there you go. The clone is left where I jaunted. You see? So and jaunt just helps with clone generation. We want to generate a lot of clones because we're using our clones. You see, just by getting in combat, 1 dodge and 2 jaunts, I already have 3 clones. So I haven't even weapon itself. So this creates a really good opener, because if I'm facing like a 1v2 and I need to hold them off for a quick second, I can just distortion, right? And I can buy time that way. If it's a 1v1 or if I'm +1ing, I can get off a quick mind rack. That's 3 clones to maybe finish them off. Or I can fake them out with Cry of Frustration first, and then lead into my Mind Rack and Diversions and Distortion. Diversion is a really, really good shatter, because when you can pop it when you are in the air with Sword, just as like a, it's just like it's kind of like a cover, even after. So what I'll do, boom, just like that. So I leapt in with my sword, and if I didn't get an interrupt, chances are my opponent is thinking, oh, okay, they use Mirage Thrust, they're not going to interrupt. But as I do my auto attack, I'll hit Diversion for like that hidden second interrupt that most of the time they're not expecting. And that will usually land, which interrupts them, which causes all of the traits to happen, including the power block, so it puts whatever ability they had, if it has a cooldown. So auto attacks don't have a cooldown. So if you interrupt an auto attack, you'll get all the benefits of your traits, but their auto attack won't go on cooldown. But if it's any other skill, it will go on that 15-second cooldown. The last tricks I will say is for Magic Bullet and Decoy. A lot of people may not know this. It took me actually a while to figure it out before I really realized it, which is Magic Bullet and Decoy are very heavily audio based. So you'll know how much time you have left on Decoy because there's a shimmer that plays, and I'll show you what I mean by that. So I'm gonna pop it over here, and you're gonna hear this kind of like high-pitched thing. See? And when that ends, that's your stealth right there. Magic Bullet is the same thing. A lot of people do kind of complain that they can't dodge it because it does come out very fast. But if you hear it, you should be able to react to it because it plays a loud sound that's different than anything else the Mesmer does. And I'll show you that. See? So if you just kind of train yourself to listen for that sound, it's the same thing with Decoy too. I believe the people around you can, even if they're enemies, they can hear the decoy as well. So if you're on a point and you kind of hear that shimmer, then chances are an enemy Mesmer has you in their sights. So get ready. I believe that's everything. I know the video is super long. I just am trying to just give out everything I know. I probably will make another video if this one is well received about how to or how I like to play. I guess a more detailed version of how I like to play, what I'm looking for exactly. I still stand by what I said in one of my first comments, one of my earliest comments, which is a good fundamental knowledge of PvP is like the best, because with that you can kind of play any class you want, because your fundamentals will carry you through, will see you through as you learn more about each and every class. And fundamentals is basically just like positioning, knowing the mechanics of each map, knowing how to work well with your team, being a good sportsman, just fundamentals like that. And if you are looking for people that teach good fundamentals and good attitude, the person I would recommend the most, because I've learned a lot the most, is VALLUN. VALLUN. He has a lot of builds that he does. He goes over a lot of different tactics. He has I think he even has like videos on teleport spots for classes with blinks and stuff like that. So it's good there. And yeah, so people like that I would recommend. There are some others, but I'm forgetting their names right now. I think if the best Mesmer or Mirage that I've seen personally, that I think is like infinitely better than myself, is I think Jazzy Man. I think or Jazzy X-Man. I think I'm butchering the name. But I'll try to find their channels and link them in my YouTube description, because I believe that those two specifically have helped me the most in learning Mirage. I'll give you my stats. I think that's important, actually. So I probably should have done that the first time. So these are my stats. Most of my PvP experiences as a Mesmer. My favorite map is not Legacy of Foefire. My favorite map is probably Coliseum. My league is, what is it, Plat. Now, I don't really PvP that much, more than most, but not like, I'm just trying to have fun. That's my main goal. I'm just trying to have fun and play the class the way I think it's meant to be played, while secretly wishing that ArenaNet gives Mirages back our second dodge, because I think we really need it. But so my history with this build, I've been playing for about, I think, 2 years, and 2 or 3 years, I would say, as a Mirage now. And for the first year and a half, I was like gold 3 or whatever. I was like 1,000. I would hover between 1,400 and like 1,470, and I could not break that. I could not break that for a solid year, I would say. And then very recently, this past year and a half, I would say, is when I finally broke through to Plat. And I wouldn't even say that is necessarily to do on whether or not I improved, but the PvP scene changed a lot because they nerfed Guardians during that time. They nerfed it was Burn Guardians. They nerfed Burn Guardians during that time. They nerfed Renegades during that time. The Rune of Speed Renegade or whatever build that was going around. So as a result, Power Mirage at least kind of got an indirect buff, because the main thing holding Power Mirage back during that time was a lot of specs were just tankier. So the burst just wasn't there. But now that there's not a lot of tanky specs that are populating PvP, Mirage Burst can kind of has a place now again. So yeah, that's everything. Thanks again. Have fun. Remember, it doesn't matter what you play, as long as you're having fun and you're not hurting people, and you're not like insulting people, or you're not having fun at the expense of other people's fun. Then play whichever you want to play. Experiment in PvP, and don't let. I know Guild Wars 2 has a toxic kind of PvP reputation, but just ignore all the haters. I would say for myself, it's still kind of like a toss-up. I'll get in some matches where my team is like, holy shit, you're so cool as a Mesmer. And then I'll get in other matches where legit, I don't even know what I did wrong. And my team is like, you're a shitty Mesmer. You need to go die or whatever. So to those people that are like that, just ignore them, block them, report them, move on, and keep having fun. So see ya.